call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. Brian Waldorf.
Brian
Waldorf. We're doing a roll call.
Oh, okay. Charles Kane.
Sharon Price.
Shelley Shipley.
Eric Horniak.
Sam Scafidi.
Sarah Butchie-Gross.
Okay. Well,
Sure. All right.
another agenda.
And do we have any audience participation today?
Do you want this packet? Maybe this one was
I
not
got
for
it.
you. There is no on-site audience participation.
No audience participation. Motion to approve the minutes for 9/27/21 meeting.
I'll motion to approve.
Sharon, motion to approve.
Seconded.
Seconded by Aaron.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I know you. I know you.
I was close this time. I was really close.
You got there.
All right. So follow up on the previous presentations from last meeting. Do we have any questions or anything pertaining to the last meeting?
Do you have any questions? The last meeting was police, fire, and dispatch. And I know a couple folks couldn't make it to that meeting, so if you had a minute to review the minutes, I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions for the chiefs or for Chrissy, because we do vote next week.
I just had one question
Sure.
regarding the minutes for the dispatch. It looks like there was a suggestion that more research be completed.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, Chrissy's still looking into it to make sure we get the right system, to make sure that we're good on the licensing costs, and to make sure that our interoperability with as many surrounding communities is accomplished. So she has a lot more research to do to make sure that we do the right thing. The budget request is for the first payment over 5 years. So we're gonna have to do something, but she is still working on make sure we do the right something.
Okay.
Yeah, she was looking at the licensing and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's going to be moved to a cloud-based system
Mm-hmm.
instead of an on-premise.
Yeah.
The one that we have is out of date.
Okay.
Yeah, she just had another meeting, I think, today or yesterday, so they're working on it.
Okay.
And then to make sure there weren't any pitfalls, like, we didn't discuss how many licenses.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, that's only 3 licenses, you need 5, that's an extra.
Yeah, we just kind of talked about what comes in the package, like what you get as far as licensing, and then, what base price we have, and then whenever you install, if there's any other licensing that she thought was coming with it.
Okay. Was there concerns or questions from anyone on the board
Mhm.
about the fact, is that what it stemmed from, is that it was a monthly cost and it's a hosted cost versus kind of fixed fee and?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, I asked all that because I work with hosted voice systems too in the past, so that's why the licensing came up, maintenance, recovery, replacement, phones and things like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, if
Any
you
other
have any other questions as you go through the week, just let me know via email or at the end of the meeting, and I can get those answered for you before next week. And we meet on Monday next week, so. Okay.
All right, we'll just move to the department head presentations.
Okay.
We got Chris Campbell first, Public Works Director.
Okay, this first one is for the Wastewater Department, and we have 4 items. The first one, gas blower for the #1 digester. This is it's a blower on one of our processes. The blower's in need of replacement. So the blower motor that's up there is worn out, and this is strictly a replacement. So. The next one, 2 pumps to replace, that's return activated sludge pumps. Again, due to age and condition, these are pumps that were put in probably the 1989 expansion project, so they've been around a while. The third item, replacement of #2 effluent pump. This is a big pump that pumps once the stream which we have our rain event, the stream comes up, we have some gates that shut down because otherwise Tinkers Creek would backflow into the treatment plant. So a couple electric gates come down, and then these effluent pumps pump over the wall, protect the treatment plant. Again, those were put in 1989, so old. And then number 4 is replacement of a muffle furnace. That's a furnace used, it's a high temperature furnace that they use for lab testing. And again, that's been around a while, and it's needed replacement. It's a real high temperature. We do volatile content on that. We burn off volatiles. So all these items are replacements for old equipment.
Any questions on wastewater requests for this year, for next year?
Are these all at the point of failure, that they're requiring replacement?
Yep. They're at that age. They've been repaired, and so we're looking at most of these we've got redundancy, we've got backups, but it's when you get into a situation in a wastewater treatment plant where you lose a pump, you're in trouble. So we're forecasting, we're looking ahead, and we want to get these things replaced before they totally fail.
So for the failover pumps that we have, how soon before we want to look at replacing those? Like, so if we go with these, obviously they last since '89,
Mhm.
pretty durable, but
Right.
what are we looking at when we replace these ones, for your failovers?
Well, with pumps, it's hard to tell. It depends on pumping conditions. For instance, we've had pumps that because of the application, they might have some issues like cavitation, and it wears the inside of the pump prematurely. We don't have any of those conditions right now on any of these pumps, and it depends on what water they're pumping and so forth, what liquid they're pumping. So we usually keep an eye on these things to the point where we know within 5 years we're going to need to replace them, and then we start forecasting.
And what's the age of the replacement, or the backups? Are they similar in age as the current ones here?
A lot of the plant, we had major expansions in 1989 and then a couple in the 90s. And that's what used to happen is we had a few expansions of that treatment plant. And when we had those expansions, we would replace old equipment along with expanding the capacity of the plant. What we're seeing now is we don't have any more of those projects coming up because our plant is as big as it's going to be allowed to be by EPA standards. So now we're looking at forecasting for these replacements, and we've got a lot of different pumps around that plant, and they all vary in the amount of age we can get out of them. There are some that you can get 5 years out of, and like these, many more years than that. So it depends on the application.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions there? Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Any more?
Oh, we're still on Chris. He's just grabbing his other binder.
Oh, gosh, okay.
He was just
Well, that
kidding.
was just wastewater.
Binder and all that.
Yeah.
My bad.
He has a few
My
pages
bad.
coming.
Okay, so this one is for the service department. And for the most part, we have, if you look on page 2, it shows which piece of equipment or what vehicle is being replaced, the age. And I have Fred Bissell with me. He's our fleet maintenance manager, and he can offer. What do you know about this? So Fred can answer more specific questions when it comes to you want to hand out those pictures, Fred, or you want to show and tell here, or you got pictures of some of the
I have a whole slide for vehicles, I think.
Most of the ones I have on these, Chris, are for the ones kind of coming up at the end of this.
Okay.
First items that you've got on the screen right now. I don't actually have pictures here, but I can
Okay.
explain about any of them.
All right.
Chris, I don't see where the age is of the, you said on the second page.
Second
Do
page,
you have that page, sir?
He's talking about his submittal with his
Oh, you
budget
didn't give him-
request.
Oh,
We can
okay.
get you copies of
Okay.
that, though.
No worries.
so I'll give you, for instance, on item number 2 is a 5-ton truck. This is a replacement for a 1994 truck. So this is a 5-ton that we use for snow plowing.
It's
So
on
that's
his,
obviously 18.
it's on his fourth, it's on his fourth slide. He's,
Service department.
That's a 1992.
That's a couple of pictures of the roof of that truck.
Okay. 1994.
I can flip back and forth on the slides, Chris, if you want to go through your list.
Okay. Okay. All right, so the first item on there is 5-ton truck. And again, that is a replacement for a 1994 truck, so age and condition. And again, that's one of our plow trucks. 2 4-wheel drive pickup trucks with plow, and that is replacement of 2 2008 pickup trucks, and again, due to age and condition. The next one is a 2-wheel drive pickup truck, and that's the replacement of a 2012 pickup. So as far as those are concerned, if you have any specific questions for Fred, we can answer those now.
Are these trucks going doors?
The majority of them are, yes. Actually, I've got a couple more. These are a couple of the trucks in question. Jump to the second slide. The majority of these vehicles that you're looking at right now, as far as
Fred, you got to come talk in the mic, sorry.
the majority of the vehicles you're looking at now, the 94 5-ton truck, of course, obviously that's very old. And you can see from the pictures that I sent up there, the biggest problem with that is rust. The vehicle still is mechanically sound, but as I put a note on the top of that picture, Ford got out of the heavy truck market in 1997. So basically the parts for that truck are obsolete. They have been for a number of years. And of course now we're at the point the body is letting go and there's just no repair for that, no parts available. The cab is actually rotting out above the windshield, so that needs to be replaced. We got our 27 years out of it, so did pretty well. The pickups, those are pickups that have been in the system before I was here, before Twinsburg had a fleet manager. Unfortunately, those trucks were not rust-proofed. That's one of the reasons those look as bad as they are for the age. But of course, they are plow trucks, so they're in the salt all winter, and they take a little bit of a beating. So.
Real quick, I remember we talked about this, and I remember last year you had talked about the fleet and how you're managing it and what you're doing to kind of preserve the fleet longevity and everything else with with updates. So these 2008 trucks that are going to be replaced, if they are, what just remind me, because I can't remember from last year, what you expect the life expectancy of them to be?
Well, a couple things. I'm trying to do things a little different. The trucks are rust-proofed immediately when they're brand new, and of course, then we try to trying to get the salt off of them, when they come in, things like that. After Eden's plowing to add to the life. I'm putting most of these in the system and looking at a 10-year replacement. And I'm actually trying to do that not because the trucks are gone in 10 years and say wore out, or rusted out like this, but what I'm trying to do, the resale on the trucks is so much higher if they're in decent shape and we turn them in 8 to 10 year period versus keeping them for 15 or 17 till we get nothing out of them. The overall cost of operation of the vehicle drops way down, and our overall cost of ownership and use. So I'm trying to shorten the life cycle to save our bottom line.
Sure.
So it's part of that. I truly believe we could probably make the trucks last, 15 years, but I'm putting them in the system on a 10-year rotation as we're going there, trying to get closer to that now.
Okay, I think that makes sense. So given that, what would you estimate if there was the 96,000 for those two pickup trucks? And I know you're going to pull it out there. We don't know what they're really going to be, valued at in 10 years, but what would you guesstimate, given that that's your plan?
And that the 96 might be a little bit high.
Okay.
We were anticipating when we were putting the budget together from information that we were getting that the automotive industry was going to see a really large increase in the light truck market, and I was actually expecting possibly a 15 to 20% increase. So by the time this would go through, they may be up there. If they don't go that high, our number should be well under that. As far as resale, right now the used vehicle market has just skyrocketed. So potentially I could see us getting, in 10 years, we may be able to pull $10,000, $12,000 on each of those trucks for resale.
Okay.
Whereas, the trucks we're selling now, some of them we're selling for $1,000 and $1,500, things like that, because they're just wore out.
Sure. Okay. And then, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, how many miles a year do the trucks average? We're looking at the rust condition, but how many miles?
On those pickups, they vary considerably, and of course, the silver pickups I inherited from Parks and Rec, which they have a different history because they were just Parks and Rec. They did driveway plowing, and that was it. But most of ours in the service department now, in that same age group, the red 2008s, have about 75 to 80,000 miles on them in 12 to 13 years. So they're not seeing really high mileage, but they are in use every day. It's one of those things they're around town, they're not out in the highway. So it's, a relatively small number of miles each day, but they're in use constantly.
The one remark I'd like to make for the group here is my area of expertise is automotive resale. I currently do that for the largest independent auto chain in Ohio right now. A 10-year-old pickup truck with 75,000 miles right now is worth $1 zillion, you're right. However, that is not a commercial city use heavy-duty truck. Right. And those trucks are not worth that much money because they're white or silver and they've had decals on them. And even though last year you presented a great program of rust prevention, and I think our next trucks will not look like this. However, the best vehicles that Ford and GM and Chrysler make, engine and transmission wise, are their trucks. And they will easily last, and I think you'll agree with me, 150,000 miles if they're maintained minimally. So what I'm just thinking is, he knows how to take care of a truck. I think in the future we could easily get these trucks to go 10, 12,000 miles, 10, 12 years, and the mileage wouldn't be prohibitive, and one blows up, we get you a truck. I just don't think selling a 75,000 mile truck would anybody here want to drive a heavy duty, big springs, big shocks, big sway bars, ex-plow truck with a black vinyl bench seat? That's just not the way trucks are sold. So while the used car market is hot, I agree with you, and trucks are hot. Commercially used trucks are not. So it's just something to consider, not trying to take your trucks away from you, but money better spent maybe somewhere else in your program.
Since we're talking about vehicles, do you want to just stay up there for a minute and we'll talk about the vehicles that the past few weeks we've talked about how the service department in their fleet maintenance program has looked at the other departments to go through their vehicles as well. And we've already seen these requests. It was fire, the K-9 unit for police, that fitness center pickup truck, and the golf course pickup truck. So those requests all came from service department. If you remember the 2 fire requests, both fire department and the service department had requested those 2. So if you have any questions on those ones that we've already gone over, now's the time we have Fred here.
I got a quick
But
question.
you guys have
on
seen
that
this before.
subject. Should we go forward with the purchase of those vehicles? What's the plan for disposal of the current ones? Auction? Auction, okay.
And then is it every vehicle associated with the city is going to be part of the fleet maintenance? You're going to be taking care of all of the vehicles as far as like the golf and everybody's rolling them in, and you're taking care of all the vehicles.
Pretty much involved across the board. You know, obviously some of the vehicles, you know, the fire department, for example, you know, has a lot of input on how they want to spec an ambulance, and as far as the fire apparatus or, you know, rescue equipment goes, I try to work with the chief and the department on the chassis side of things like that.
Gotcha.
So as far as that side of it goes, you know, I try to give them my input on when we would need to replace and so forth, and you know, work together on specing new equipment, things like that. So then some of the other departments, obviously service, you know, handle that 100%.
He's maintaining everything.
Okay. Yeah, that was
that
basically that. Was
Yeah,
basically what I was-
his department of mechanics
Yeah.
maintain everything from the smallest of trucks to our fire apparatus.
Yeah, weed eaters to ladder trucks. So
Okay. Yeah, that was what I was looking for.
And he really knows his stuff too. I remember last year I grilled you on all this stuff, and he's a sharp guy. In other words, these trucks will not deteriorate the way they did in the past, so.
Do you have any data around you know, looking at the fleet as a whole and how much of it is, you know, how much of it has been modernized, how much of, you know, progress will be made? What's the forecast over the next couple of years? You know, like, do you anticipate the budget request for new vehicles to be at a similar level, you know, in the next several years?
Chris and I actually do have on the service department end have things laid out on a projected replacement basis up through, I think, 2045.
Okay.
So as we've been replacing, I plug those back into the fleet, and, you know, we can project that to some degree. You know, obviously some things are going to change. Sure. Some of the other departments, the smaller departments are done the same way. I have those done, you know, for building, engineering. The police are a little different with theirs, because of course they put more miles on theirs than anybody else. So those cars are running 24/7. So of course, you know, we've been doing the 3 or 4 year turn on those. Mm-hmm. So they're a little different for the majority of their department. But yeah, I mean, we have it projected out pretty far. I think next year, if I recall, without looking at my notes, I think it drops down quite a bit. This year we got hit with a year or two's items that were pushed off and, you know, pushed back for a year or two, and then a couple other things that have just become maintenance problems that we need to address before they get worse. So
Sure. I know, and I get it. It takes time. So, I mean, I was just kind of curious to see. You know, I know good progress has already been made, and we're going to continue to do so. But just wanted to have an idea of you know, how much more we're looking at, how soon that will come. But yeah, if you had any information you could provide on that you think would be helpful, that'd be great.
yeah, we should be able to.
And I don't need it for. I don't, you know, just what you have. You know, what you have ready and available. I don't need that fleet wide. I know that police and fire is different. But just looking, you know,
yeah, as far as service and those, I can definitely get some of that, you know, to Sarah.
That would be sufficient for me. Yeah,
sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on fleet? All right, we'll back up back into the equipment requests then.
Just on the slide up there right now, just real quick, running down through these. The landscape trailer is a replacement for a trailer that's about 25 years old that we inherited from Parks and Rec. It's been welded and repaired about as many times as we can, and it's got pushed back, actually, I think once or twice already. So that one's really a needed item that we use every day from spring through fall. The equipment trailer is a medium-duty trailer that I can haul utility tractors, rollers, skid steers, that type of equipment on. The trailer we had been doing that with, we turned into a slab jack trailer for the slab jack program for the city. And that basically is set up with that equipment and permanently attached to it now. So that's just a replacement for that unit. I believe it's also been pushed off for a year or two previously. The wood chipper is a replacement for a 21 or 22-year-old machine that has pretty well been worn out. 2 zero-turn mowers, again, are on our regular turn. I try to get rid of those because they're small air-cooled engines at about 2,000 hours before we get into engine replacements, which are usually a third of the cost of the mower. So I've got 2 of those that are hitting that hour mark. One of them's actually about 4 years old. The other one I think is closer to 10 or 11. But they're both at the point where we need to replace them before we have to do an engine on those. The compact excavator is a new piece of equipment, but we're offsetting that by the trade-in of a bulldozer that is unutilized, I should say. The dozer is seeing a very, very small amount of hours per year. We've had a couple last 2 years where we've had like less than 20 hours use on that machine. It doesn't make financial sense to keep a dozer and the upkeep for an undercarriage on a bulldozer, anything like that, for that small amount of use. 2 or 3 times a year we can rent one for a couple days and have a few $100s in it, and we don't have to store the machine, we don't have to maintain it. An undercarriage for that dozer is probably $30,000. It just doesn't make sense for us to have a dozer anymore. A mini excavator we can probably use on a weekly basis, and if we had the machine, I'm sure we'd probably use it a lot more and use it in some jobs where it could be more efficient than using our large backhoes. So that's where that's coming in.
Is the $85,000 net, is that after the trade-in?
No, that is actually, the 85 is the upfront cost of the excavator. That would be offset by what we would get for the dozer. I've got to do some work with that to see what we're going to get. It's a very low hour machine, but it is 20 years old. But it's also non-emission, which is in high demand because it's before all the heavy emissions was put on the diesel engines. So those are selling pretty hot right now. So I think we could possibly get 25,000 out of that machine. That's a guess right now, but I've got to get some quotes on that. The leaf machine is a replacement of, I believe it's a 1994 unit. Again, we're talking a 26, 27-year-old machine. And that has spent, got all your notes right there? Okay. Got 93 on this, so I was close. It's even a little older. Those machines, unfortunately, lived their life outside for a number of years because we didn't have enough building space, and that was one of the machines that became a low priority way before I was here as fleet manager. So, they've spent a number of years weathering outside. We do keep them inside now as much as possible, but that is a 25, 26-year-old machine. that we're replacing there. The roller is a roller we use for asphalt repair. It would be replacing a smaller machine that is, in my opinion, a little too small for what we do. You know, we have some issues with that because it's such a small machine to get enough compaction with the asphalt. So we're looking at stepping up a size or two on that roller. That also would be offset by the sale of the other machine, which is older but in good condition. I'm estimating maybe $3,000 to $5,000 on the trade-in on the other machine or sale, whichever way we would choose to go. And the last item on that slide is the standby generator setup that we were looking at for the service department. And Chris may know more about that than I do, but I believe it's to take care of the backup power for the fuel pumps and the service department building, and at least lighting in the service department storage building.
Yeah, that's correct. With the service department, you know, we respond to emergencies in the city, and we bring these crews in to the building. We've got no standby power, so if power's out, we can't even open our doors. So they get in through the man doors, and they get ladders, and they stand on ladders to open these overhead doors. These, what are those, 16-footers?
Yeah.
16-foot doors. So, you know, in a sense, we're first responders to a lot of these events, and we can't even, in a lot of cases, get our equipment out. So this is to provide electricity for our service department, basically, so we can just basically do our thing. So.
Next up is your technology requests.
Oh, that's Fred.
Can I ask one more question about the compact excavator? Does it have dramatically more capacity than a backhoe? And to get another tractor with a backhoe, would that be dramatically more than $85,000? I'm just wondering, you know, when you talk about a compact excavator, they don't do a whole lot. And if we're doing it with a backhoe now for the money, a backhoe's got a front end loader, you could put a snowplow on. I'm just saying is, I hate to spend $85,000 and have it end up like the bulldozer.
In that regard, the excavator would actually, because it's a compact, it would have less lifting power and so forth than you know, digging reach than the backhoes. It would not be to replace one of the backhoes. It would actually be the opposite. We have a lot of things where we can't get a full-size 22,000 pound, 25,000 pound backhoe in the work area when we're getting into some of the people's yards and different places for storm drains and catch basin work, things like that. And it's also, you know, a little more of a hassle to move a machine that size in time and cost. The mini excavators on rubber tracks, you know, we can throw them on a small to medium-sized trailer and get them to the job. We can get them through gates in people's yards and through gates and at the ball fields, things like that. We can run a small machine like that, you know, across a ball field or a golf course without leaving ruts to go in and, you know, pull fence posts, do a ditching job, anything like that. Also with a backhoe, you're limited to a 90-degree swing left to right. With an excavator, you have a 360-degree swing. So in tight areas, you can actually take a scoop of dirt and spin all the way around and dump in a truck behind you that you can't do with a backhoe. So there's a lot of excavating that can be done with a small excavator, in some cases twice as efficient as you can with the backhoe. So
Is that going to be used for like sidewalk repair and things like that?
Absolutely.
I've seen a huge backhoe out in my house, and it was huge.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the mini excavators. They're actually taking over a huge part of the market of the backhoes previously held because of what you can do with them. I'm sure that they would be used for a lot of our concrete work, sidewalk repair, ditching, the list goes on and on. Even getting them into an area to set a manhole, because we can go across lawns and things without leaving a foot of ruts, across the yard, so.
Great, thank you.
Okay, on the next slide up here, just running through that real quick, the heavy-duty truck diagnostic equipment is basically the software and hardware we need to maintain the new trucks. We currently don't have a scan tool for the heavy-duty trucks. We do have a laptop with some software, but we need to add a scan tool with capability. Without it, with the modern trucks, you can't even find out why the radio doesn't work in the truck without a scan tool. Everything's computerized. So to have a truck pull in the bay and have a technician look at it without a scan tool, it's just a guessing game. You could waste thousands of dollars worth of parts if you don't go in and do the diagnostics to find out why that component isn't working. It's often not the component, it's something else telling the component not to come on. So that's basically some software and the scan tool to handle our heavy-duty trucks. Also, the majority of our newer truck fleet is also just starting to push outside of the edge of the warranty period on those. So everything from here on out is going to be out-of-pocket cost on a majority of those newer trucks that we've got over the last few years. So again, that makes it very important that we're able to do this. It's just the diagnostic fees can be $300 to $500 on the truck just for them to scan one at a lot of the dealers. So it makes sense for us to have it. The next item is basically the same thing for the automotive side, for the cars. The tool we have is several years old, I think close to 8 or 10 years old. It is no longer going to be updatable by the manufacturer. I was notified of that about 8 to 10 months ago. And so we will not be able to put the updates beyond the 2020 model year into that scan tool. So we have to be able to do that for the new police cars and, everything else that we add to the fleet from here on out with cars and pickups. The cemetery software, I'll let Chris explain because I don't know much about that, or the traffic cabinets. So.
Thanks.
Any questions on the software or for the scan tools? Thanks.
Thank you, Fred.
The cemetery software, it's out. I don't know what we're doing with that.
Yeah, I think we took that out in our meeting, but I mean,
Okay.
you can talk about it.
Well, the reason we had put this in here, we take care of the cemetery and take care of, making the burials and what have you. The records that we have are books from the 1940s in a lot of cases, and the majority of those are written in pencil. We have nothing electronic. We have no records. We have no mapping. And at some point, I'm afraid we're not going to have very good records. So it's one of those, with software, it's actually a project. We've worked with the Historical Society in the past to recreate. I guess there was a fire or a flood or something many years ago that destroyed some of the records. And actually, with Fred's mom, we've recreated some of those. Historical Society has been very involved in that cemetery. But, until we get software and put the information on there, you should see these books. I mean, it's crazy. But they're written in pencil. So I think it's a worthwhile project, and I think it's one we should undertake. So.
I think the discussion, was we were going to have our GIS engineering department coordinator kind of look at ways of mapping out that to see if there was kind of an internal database that we could create. It's not a huge cemetery, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get the records up to speed. So it wasn't pulled out, but we kind of flagged it and said, let's see what we can do in-house before we go buy software.
Or in-house, or is that something that we could like, maybe give a project to the school or somebody, like an internship or something, let them create a database or give them the opportunity to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, that's kind of was the discussion, was to see what types of alternative resources, because I think once it's built. I mean, there's a handful of cemetery plots left there? If any?
Yeah, I don't know the number that's left, but there's change in ownership sometimes, and, you know,
Yeah.
these plots change hands and what have you.
Yes.
And a lot of people do research, actually, you know, family research, and becomes very difficult, you know, and you want that information readily available. You want, you know, it's one of those things we like to be able to hand the people, the family, some nice records to have, and with mapping and what have you. So, want them to know that we're taking good care of the cemetery for them.
And then the traffic cabinet, I've got a note on the slide there that we're holding for citywide analysis. That's actually a project that Amy is going to be working with an outside engineering firm. Is it an engineering firm? To do a citywide study of our traffic signals, so that we can put together a plan citywide and possibly get funding for that plan through, I forget which program it is. EMS program. So that's why it's just on hold, because we're going to do that analysis, put ourselves together so we can put an application in to get some of those replaced.
And I think so the basketball court is located at Glen Meadow Park. It's an asphalt surface, having a lot of cracking and a lot of issues. We haven't really performed any maintenance up there. The product they're looking at is a special product that they use for basketball courts, and it's just to bring the basketball court back up to reasonable standard. So.
I think we covered everything for service. We bounced around a bit there, but I think we had everything on all the slides. Any other questions for Chris or Fred at the moment? I know that was a lot of information, so if you think of something, just email me throughout the week. And I actually already sent you over the detail behind the service department request, so you have those years. So just in case you missed them when you were jotting them down, you've got all that for the next 5 years. And then we'll get you a cartograph report that was requested there as well. But you've already got the first set of documents in your email. Okay? All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks a lot.
And next up, we have Amy Moore. So the first one is just the engineering request.
Good evening. The first slide really, I think she put it there, we're basically going to move ahead money we had put money in the budget. The plotters, I guess, going closer to 10 years old, becomes obsolete. It's computerized equipment, so we're keeping that working as long as we can, but we want to have something in the budget in case we fail and can go do that.
You
So
guys-
we didn't have to buy one yet this year.
Yeah. We're just going to hold the money. You guys already approved it for this year, and we'll just hold the money open for next year. She's just getting a little more life out of it.
Okay, so that's my only department request.
Yeah. And just real quick, Amy, before you jump in on the infrastructure requests, I just want to explain what you're going to see over the next couple slides. Because this year we started talking about how we paid for the different programs and the different pieces of equipment. each piece of her infrastructure program, I broke down how we're paying for it. So you have that listing of the funds and where the money comes from for each fund. So now on her requests, you'll be able to see, okay, she's asking, like you see that road striping program. Well, we're paying for that a little bit with our street construction maintenance and repairs fund, and we're paying for that a little bit with our state highway fund, because she's gonna stripe some of the state highways that are applicable, okay? So just so you know, it looks a little different this year, just so you can see the different pieces, parts.
Okay, and then I'm going to start by a discussion I had with Sarah yesterday about what we asked for the road program SCMR. We asked for $1 million when we started doing the budget process. We've actually gone out in the field and done a field survey and got quantities and put together the full estimate. So what we are going to ask is go to 1.2 million on that. And one of the reasons is one of the projects I'm going to be discussing is White Oak and Birchwood. And that's Ohio Public Works reconstruct for a portion of it. But there's still a remainder of the road that basically would need to be resurfaced, isn't covered by the grant programming. I would like to do it all at once to get through there, and that's what pushes me over the top in the dollars. So that's why the request is there. So in the road program of the $1 million, we're looking at about 10 streets in there. Abrams Drive, basically, which would be Abrams Development, which would be Lister, Cabot, and a small section of Darien over there. We're looking at Ethan's Drive from 91 over to Mathers Way, through Mathers Way on both sections of that. Killingsworth, and then Dayflower, Silver, Dale Circle, and Buckthorn are the two side streets off of that. And that would equal about 5 lane miles of roadway. So that's in the $1 million. We also do curb repairs and catch basin repairs and things that need to be done as we comprehensively look at that road for what would be just a resurfacing. We're not reconstructing the road, which everybody says, oh, you rebuilt my road. We're resurfacing those roads. And that basically extends the life of that surface course. The next on the list is the Dorwich Waterline and reconstruction associated with that is Ohio Public Works funding. We did move that project with Ohio Public Works because that funding was actually supposed to be spent this year, but we downsized a lot of our programming the last 2 years for financial reasons. So they allowed us to extend that. So that project includes waterline, sanitary, storm sewer, and then a rebuild of the entire roadway. And it's actually, you'll see it in multiple locations. This is for the road reconstruction portion of that project. Dorridge adds about another 1 lane mile of 1 lane mile of road to our total. So now we're up to 6. Road restriping, that's just citywide striping. We are pretty much on a paint system now, and the paint is a latex type paint. They don't allow oil bases with EPA, so it just doesn't last as long. So we are back to a 1 year painting for that. White Oak, Birchwood was one that we applied for last year for Ohio Public Works funding. It's a reconstruction of the phase 1 of White Oak and Birchwood, and that's the section of the roadway attached to Ashdale. The subdivision was built in two phases. This phase was built originally in concrete, had an asphalt overlay. When we did Ashdale a few years ago to resurface it, pulled the asphalt off, started heavy equipment on there, and broke all the concrete up. We don't want to be caught in that mess, so we applied for funding for the reconstruction. So the grant, the reconstruction portion of that was the 415. We did receive half of that money, 215 in Ohio Public Works. It's grant money, and again, that's where my extra dollars will go, so that I can resurface all the way and get out of that subdivision, complete the resurfacing in that subdivision. That would, a combination, if you do both the reconstruct and the resurfacing, that's another lane mile, so now we're up to 7. And then I have the Odot Ravenna Road project. What do I got there? Odot Ravenna Road project, which is a grant-funded project. It's an 80-20 split, so we'll get money back for that associated in there. We are able to use permissive tax. It's a fund that's run through the county. There's only about 5 roads that are eligible for permissive tax in the city, so we will be taking some of that money, and that's a gas fund tax that the county administers. We'll make application for that, but they do have that money available for that. So that total gets me up to about 10 and a half lane miles of roadway. We have over 190 lane miles of roadway. We were trying to get on a 20-year program. The last 2 years, we've only done about, if we would have kept on that cycle, we were about on a 40-year cycle. So we fell a little bit behind, but I'm comfortable with what we've got there to get us back so that we're kind of going on a 20-year cycle. It leaves about 10 and a half lane miles that are over 20 years still in existence, and then some roads don't make it to 20 years, so we've got that plus or minus moving through there. So that's infrastructure for roads. Is there any questions on that portion of the so far?
Did you say the Ravenna Road resurfacing was 10 miles or the total?
No, the total will be 10 and a half miles, so that was a little over 3 miles, 3.5 miles. So it's from East Idlewood to Glenwood is the section that we haven't completed yet in the resurfacing. Okay. Water and sewer. Okay, this is the other portion of the Dorridge, which we talked about. So it's a breakdown of how we're paying out of it, different funds, the water improvement fund, the sewer, and the storm sewer portion of that project. Cannon Road is a corrugated metal pipe replacement on the side of the road, which is basically a ditch enclosure up there. It was originally in the programming for 2020 with our storm improvement project, which we never awarded. So we broke parts out of that program and have been doing it. We kind of need to do this now because we are going to get funding to do the hill through AMATS, and that becomes a whole different issue if we basically go from just a resurfacing to an environmental and doing other things associated with it. So we want to get the storm sewer fixed on the side of the road this coming year, and then follow it with the resurfacing with an AMATS grant. So, and then we just always carry some funds for emergent repairs. That could be service department hiring a contractor, or getting the materials for doing a dig for a sanitary or storm lateral that's within the right of way to a house. That's typically where a lot of that goes. So. Any questions on sewer and water? Keep going.
Quick
I'm
question.
just curious because I know nothing about it. But like you see on the news, the city of Cleveland, has a sinkhole because of a water line break or the sewer problem. They go back to 1928, 1934. How modern is our water and sewer system? And like Dorridge Road, the water line and the sewers, we're spending $1.5 million. Is this like a 30-year life cycle, or is this something going to happen in those areas, the next street over coming up?
Right. The Glenwood Acres area is made of a transite pipe, which we experienced years ago on East Idlewood, a lot of busts and a lot of in the area that there were breaks associated with it. When you disturb it doing any other work, so we've been probably for the last 15, 18 years doing replacement of the transite pipe. We have over 470,000 linear feet of water line that we maintain or own. A lot of that, we've been working on the transite, which because it is a very strong material when it's left completely by itself for the most part, but it has, as it ages, it's susceptible to the cracking and things like that. So loading with garbage trucks and other vehicles could start to cause some vibrations, and as it gets old, it's more brittle. So that's kind of where we've made that call to go through that. We also have cast iron pipe in the city, and that's got some lead associated with joints. As far as welds in certain areas, it's not necessarily a whole lead pipe, but some of the welding isn't. And then we use ductile iron pipe as well to make that makeup. Let's see if I have the list. About 50%, water lines basically, if you talk to Cleveland Water, they'll say 100 years. When I put an application for Ohio Public Works, they say underground utilities 50 years. Let's say it's 75 years, okay? You do the math, you divide it out, we have to start looking at it. Now, we've been doing a water line project about a half mile to maybe a half mile of water every 2 years. which is fine because most of our system, half of our system is probably got a good life. But as we start catching up to the waterline life, we have to start looking at the system. So, like I said, we made a conscious effort about 17 years to start looking at the transite pipe. We still have a few roads that we'll be moving through for grant funding over the next few years to get that done, and then the goal would be moved to cast iron. We have things, I don't have my list right here. I know we have pipe that's pretty old down like Ravenna and 90, where it came into the city. The stuff in the acres is when the acres was built, which is in the 50s, 1957, something like that. So we do have some things as far as sewer lines or pipes that could be sewer lines I think we have in 1929. That's one of the projects I'll have next year is a sewer line that's been in the ground for close to 100 years. But so there's a lot of, our system, because our city is only 50 years old really, and we've been built out. Most of our building started about 40 years ago, and it went for a good 25 years. That's where a lot of our age of our system is, so it's all going to hit at once at some point. Sanitary sewer, we have over 505,000 linear feet of sanitary sewers. Storm sewer, we have over 1,600 linear feet of storm sewer. In storm sewers, we've been going after corrugated metal pipe and have gotten most of the corrugated metal pipe out of our system, which only has about a 20-year life. Plastic pipe can have a 100-year life, so it varies on what the material is.
But guys, one more question. Sorry to be so nosy, but I mean, all the infighting here with the Republicans and Democrats and this infrastructure deal. Is this something in your experience in the past that trickles down and we're going to get money for these things? I mean, infrastructure is infrastructure. What do you hear? What do we think? Are we going to get a big check or a big bonus here someday?
This funding's a little bit, we have to see how it rolls out. Last time with the ERA funding, we did get some funding for different things. We did purchase a water line. We did do, I think, a water line project, and we do not score as well. We are a very healthy city financially, and our population has a higher income per capita than a lot of surrounding areas. So places, and our system isn't as old as an Akron or a Cleveland. So I think what you're going to see, we don't have lead pipes for the water line going to the houses. In any place I've uncovered pipes, it's always been copper or plastic. There have been some plastic, but I've not seen any lead on anything I've uncovered. But in those other cities, that they're going after a lot of the lead. So some of the parameters we don't fall under. I mean, we'll watch it and we'll see what we can do, but it all depends how they roll it. It's how they roll it out. I'm not looking favorably in a lot of that funding just because of kind of where it's going, but they may not be able to, there might be so much money that they're just trying to spend it and we might get some of the trickle down, so.
No, it's great, thank you.
Sarah, I just had a quick question for you. So thank you for breaking out the funding sources, for each of the improvements. That's helpful. So with those, with those sources, those funds that are out there, do we typically deplete them like each year annually if it's budgeted? Is it something that
we do not deplete the funds usually, like especially in sewer revenue and sewer improvement funds. We carry good balances in there. We try to keep at least $1 million in our capital improvement fund. SCMR, we keep between $1.5 and $2 million. So we don't usually try to let those funds go down to zero. Some of the smaller funds, sometimes that happens, like a permissive tax, if she uses all the funds that are left in there, it might, but that's the only thing we can use it for, so that's the purpose of that fund. Same thing with like water utility. We might take that because it's a smaller fund. You see that extra $2 on your quarterly sewer bill, that's what goes into that water utility fund, so there's just not a lot there. So we'll probably use that up next year, but for the most part, our funds, no, we do not deplete them each year.
Right, because we're paying into that obviously to make sure that we fund those things, so we need to keep up with those projects. Like these are kinds of things that like they're cyclical, right? You have to keep working through them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
No.
wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And we'll talk a little bit when we get to the last slide. I have sort of our cuts slide, and we can talk a little bit about that more. But we've got one more slide for Amy for land and development.
Okay. In this year's tree program, I put 24,000. We did 80,000 this past year because we had a lot of trees in new developments or paid by developers. This will be pretty much infill dead trees, trees that have been removed associated with projects, replacements associated with that. Our sidewalk program, we have 50,000 in there. We had 50,000 last year. It's a list that the service department, after they've done leveling and areas that they can't get to, we add that into the road program. And then Liberty Park best management practice will be an add-on associated with creating some water quality feature associated over there, and that is from the EPA requirement when we put the ball field in. We use the stormwater detention that was originally designed in 2003 as the outlet for that. 2003 is not the same criteria for water quality, so even though it's a ball field, we have to add a water quality element up there, so we'll be retrofitting a basin for some water quality up there. So that's what that's for.
Any other questions for Amy?
Thanks.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, so our last slide you did not have on the presentation that I sent out Friday because I had to do a little bit more updating. And that's one of the reasons on that top line for our capital improvements, you don't see a negative for that $42,000 traffic signal box and the cemetery program we were talking about, because I was working on these slides before we had our very last budget meeting with Public Works. So we had a couple updates after these were done. So this last slide is essentially going over what we've already cut. So that $479,000 number, we're actually above $500,000 now because of that traffic box that we're holding. And Amy, we're gonna roll over Amy's plotter from this year's requests. So we're up over $500,000 in cuts that we have already made just in these meetings. So I went through and was looking to see some areas that we might need to keep an eye on for further cuts at this point in the budget process. And the only fund that I think we're going to have to keep an eye on is really that street construction maintenance repairs. We need to double that program, but there are a few revenue items that we kind of have to wait and see to make sure that we'll be able to do that. One of them is the American Rescue Plan funding that we talked about last time, where we got $1 million this year, $1 million next year, and some of that funding is applicable for infrastructure on the water sewer side. But also if we use it for revenue replacement, we can use it for road program costs. So there's a lot of things we can do with that money, but we have to make those decisions before I can, for sure say that we can go forward with SCMR. But I think at this time, we need more information before we would cut anything. So I wouldn't expect at this point, the Capital Improvement Board, that we would make those cuts. If we have to go there, it'll probably be next year in the first quarter when we have more information. But other than that, those police and fire changes that we made, that we talked about last week, with the dispatch system going to a 5-year plan, with us holding off on the Station 1 improvements for the fire station so that we can really do a study. Those things coming off got us underneath of what the county is estimating that police and fire levy fund money to come in. So we should be able to take care of the rest of the requests that police and fire came up with. Now, it won't leave us a whole lot of room to grow that fund just yet, but I think for year one, that's probably okay because we need to do a little bit of catch up. Because the past couple of years we've been trying to hold back a little bit. But if there were any items that you needed more information on, or that you think, I think we can hold off on this, but we did remove, those couple items from Fitness Center, which was that chemtrol unit that she talked about at our first meeting that does the pool chemical stuff. She said she can hold off till 2024. So we've removed that. We removed the Diamond Bright, that pool lining that again she's going to do in 2024, and we're going to hold off on that pickup truck over there, or maybe give them a one of the spares from Service Department if they get approved for the couple new trucks that they're looking at next year. And then over, I think the last one was that traffic signal box we already talked about. That's at the top. The number's not in there just yet because we cut that after I was done with my slides. So I apologize. But I can send you an updated slide. But so at this time, I don't have any recommendations for further cuts on the requests that you've seen over the last couple weeks. So the last item on our agenda was to go over this final slide and then also a discussion on next week's voting. So I know 4 out of the 5 of you have been here for the voting process. So Shelley, I think it'll be new to you next week. We do meet on Monday. And if you have any questions, now's the time, because on Monday we'll do the voting. And then also there was a request last week about getting to see some of the equipment that you guys have approved. Police and fire are doing an open house on October 6th. But I talked to both chiefs and they also said that they would be, happy to take you guys around on Monday after our voting meeting. Usually that meeting is pretty quick. So if you want to see it on your own, we could do that Monday, or you could come to the open house on October 6th. And the open house is kind of fun. There's, you can bring the kids and there's snacks and games and stuff. But I wanted to let you know about that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anything else? Any miscellaneous items we need to cover?
That is, my miscellaneous item was going to see the fire truck.
That works. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Sharon.
Second?
Second by Charles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
You too.
You did it.